Hey guys. Well, before I start, I got to commend the conference organizers for giving you a beer break before Josh and I came up to talk. Dave just demonstrated what a beer break is like. Usually when I'm at the end of the day, I feel like I'm keeping you all from your beer. And that makes me feel bad, it makes you feel bad. It's bad all around. But now I feel like you had your beer already, so the level of attention to this talk should be really, really high, right? Yeah, beer? Anyway, I wanted to talk about the billion-dollar question, and I'll get to that in a second. First, a little bit about me. Most of my growth expertise come from working at LinkedIn, similar to Josh. I joined in 2007. That's me. I was very proud of holding that 1 in the picture. I felt special. It gets harder as the numbers get bigger. The homepage was very similar to the screenshot that Josh showed at this time. And as you can see, we had about 13 million users. Of course, we grew pretty quickly. So this is the $200 million or 200 million user picture. You can kind of see what happens in hypergrowth. You know, the numbers get bigger. The sign gets fancier, right? There's more people in the picture. And most disheartening, your spot in the picture is a lot smaller than it used to be. So I'm over here. You can see I take up less of the picture now, which is good, And after LinkedIn, I was looking around at other companies and ended up going to Wealthfront. And Wealthfront is really going to be the core of my talk, the insights from Wealthfront. But first, just a very quick introduction. How many of you have heard of Wealthfront before? All right, wow. How many of you have heard of it before this conference? Realized there was bias there. All right, not that bad. So Wealthfront is an online wealth manager. We call ourselves an automated investment service. So if you have some money to invest and you're not sure how to do it, or you want a very easy way to do it, you can send your money to Wealthfront and we'll basically take care of it for you. We'll invest you in the markets. We'll hopefully grow your money over time. We'll have some of the best investment thinkers in the business monitoring what's going on with your portfolio, and it's super easy. Now, that's the good part. Bad part about working at Wealthfront, it is probably the hardest onboarding process you've ever seen, right? How many of you have a site or a product or an app where to get value from the product, the user signing up has to give you $5,000? There's one. I like it. Good job. Yeah, that's my product right now. So as you may imagine, low conversion process. Here's another fun one. Can you guys see something on this page? Social Security number. How many of you have an onboarding flow that asks for a Social Security number? Yeah, even the 5,000 guy is quiet right now. So seriously, hardest onboarding you've probably ever seen. You know, regulated industry, we have to ask for the Social Security number. We don't give you any value until you send us your money. And so this was the problem. And the question I kept hearing again and again, the question that I'm calling the billion-dollar question, is can the kind of stuff you guys learned today, the kind of stuff that I learned at LinkedIn and eBay and other companies, right? Growing consumer products, optimizing the onboarding process as Josh talked about, picking the one metric that matters or the two metrics that matter. Does that stuff actually work for a crazy product like Wealthfront, right? Does it work, or do you need something completely different? That's the question I kept hearing. And by the way, I called it the billion-dollar question because Wealthfront's goal was to get $1 billion under management. We wanted our clients to send us $1 billion to manage. And we were just about to cross 100 million when we set that goal. So it seemed really hard. Of course, no one actually asked this question this way. This is not a nice question to ask, right, if you find someone in the street. But they'd say stuff along these lines. So these are actual quotes. I've paraphrased some of them. But this is the kind of stuff we heard. People don't talk about that money. You will never make this viral. Crazy, right? You know, last year, we doubled our viral growth. So that ended up being not true. You know, one of my early growth plans was doubling our conversion rate from very low to slightly higher. Again, social security number. You know, folks looked at that plan and they said, Elliot, you're crazy. You will never double the conversion rate of this product. They ended up being right. We only increased it by 98%. I feel pretty bad about that, but it's okay. So what I'm hoping you take away from this talk is that no matter how complex your product or what's going on, actually a lot of the stuff you learned today will work. And I want to give you some more detail. But first, this is actually what ended up happening. So we did hit the $1 billion goal that the company set for itself. We hit it months ahead of schedule. You know, we grew to $1 billion under management in about 2.5 years. Just as a frame of reference, it took Charles Schwab 6 years to do that when they started. So we did get there, and I want to tell you how we did it and how the things you learned today actually work for a crazy product like Wealthfront. So first off, what Josh said is still true, right? You need to find your one or your few key metrics. I actually love it when I can boil everything down to a single metric, and I encourage you to have teams that are focused on moving a single metric. The truth is it's unlikely that you're going to be able to run your entire business off a single number, right? Even Josh's examples had 2 numbers usually. So we ended up with 4, but they were 4 metrics that we knew if we moved, we accelerated our progress toward our goal. And more importantly, we knew how much we had to move each of the 4 metrics, right? We knew we needed to double one of them and increase another one by 25% and do those kinds of things, which allows you to do very effective prioritization. If you need to double a metric, then a lot of ideas that will probably move that metric by 10% suddenly stop looking that good, right? You need bigger ideas. Once you figure out your metrics, and I think this kind of follows nicely from Josh's talk, you need to be watching your metrics like a hawk, right? How many of you have key metrics for your product or business? All right, not 100%, but maybe people are too lazy to raise their hand. How many of you watch your metrics at least weekly? All right, daily, hourly. I actually think only the hourly people are doing their job, right? Because you should be watching your metrics like a hawk. The movement of those metrics is going to give you insights into what's going on. In particular, this is a very important rule. If your numbers have changed in some way and you don't know why, you're really not doing your job as someone who's trying to grow your product or your app. If you had a higher conversion rate today and you don't know why, figure out why. If you got more traffic today, you don't know why, figure out why. If your traffic dropped today, you don't know why, figure out why, right? I see so many people look for changes in their metrics and kind of wave them away without figuring out what's actually going on underneath. Figuring out these things is going to give you insights. We actually had one of these we saw one of our channels start to perform amazingly well over the course of a single day. And the next day it went back to normal. We're like, well, what happened? So we looked into it, and now that insight is actually responsible for 20% of our growth, right? Something happened. It was accidental. It was unexpected. It was very good. We figured out what it was, and we doubled down into it to create even greater impact. So watch your numbers like a hawk. Second rule, double down on what's working. I'll give you guys a hypothetical example to test your intuition. Let's say you have one product that's doing amazingly well as part of your business, and one product that's underperforming. Which product should get more resources in your company? Who thinks it's the product working amazingly well? Who thinks it's the product that's not working? All right, you guys figured it out, except that guy. That's right, it's possible. Sometimes you have selfish incentives like that. Just don't add the social security number flow to it, it's okay. Double down on what's working. If a growth channel is working, if a piece of your site is working, if a product in your product portfolio is working, push more into that to see how much more you can get out of it. This is one of the things we did last year. And by the way, some of you have seen me speak before, and you've seen statements like this. It is easier to build on a strength to improve a weakness. Or in the consumer product sense, it is easier to get an active user to do more than to get an inactive user to do anything. These are just examples of doubling down on something that's working, right? In Josh's example, it was probably easier to take a casual Twitter user to a core Twitter user than it was to recover a cold Twitter user to either casual or core, right? It's going to be the same for you. So at Wealthfront, we had this product called tax loss harvesting. The company was very excited about it. And when I arrived, things were going pretty well. And it was pretty clear that this product was incredibly successful from the numbers. And so we launched another version, right? Bigger, better, more money required, right? That's the kind of thing you want to keep doing. Believe it or not, this was incredibly controversial inside the company. In most internet companies, there are a lot of people that want to do the shiny new thing, that want to explore a new area, rather than doubling down on something that's already working. Most folks inside the company actually wanted to try something completely different, right? And it took a lot of convincing to say, you know what, why don't we do the easy thing and take something that's working and just make it better, right? And get more assets. And that's what we ended up doing. We actually tried the other ideas folks suggested, the newer ideas later on, and it ended up that this was a very clear, correct decision for us to make. So remember, double down on what's working, right? It's always tempting to do the new thing. Usually the best path is to take something that already works, just push into it some more. You probably heard this a lot today. How many of you guys do testing, A/B testing, bucket testing, some form of testing? Your hands just keep going lower and lower throughout the day. Not going to take that as feedback. Or maybe I should, I don't know. So you should be experimenting a lot. You've probably heard this a lot, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. But I'm going to show you how cheap some experiments are. So at Wealthfront, when I arrived, we had a very small team, but somehow this team had churned out 3 different home pages for the site. They're similar, but they present the site in completely different ways. And depending on how you came in and how many things you clicked on, you saw a different version. But no one actually bothered to test which of these 3 was the best. Right? They were designed, they were built, they were approved by our compliance department, which, by the way, is another hurdle you have in the financial services industry. everything was done, no one ever thought about, well, maybe we should just randomly show people one of these three in case one of them is a lot better than the other two. So we did that. That was probably my first month. Guess what? One of them is 20% better than the other two, right? This was 3 hours of an engineer's time to run this experiment for a 20% lift in growth, right? So sometimes you don't even have to think about new experiments to run. There's stuff that other people have tried in your organization, other stuff that got built that no one ever bothered to test. And you can be the one that tests it, and maybe it's a win. So remember this if you're trying to find ideas for tests. So that leads me to the billion-dollar answer, right? As you saw from the previous slides, the techniques you've heard about today, finding metrics that really reflect what you're trying to do, experimenting, optimizing, focusing on what your active users are doing, focusing on your strengths, doubling down on them, right? Using a variety of marketing channels and experimenting with them. Those things do work even when you have a crazy product that requires $5,000 and a social security number. And so the real billion-dollar answer is that the stuff you learned today, the stuff you learned from the various speakers, stuff you learned from Josh, the stuff you're learning does work even when you have a really hard problem. So please go out there and make your products grow. Thank you. I'm happy to take some questions if anyone has any. Yeah, up in the front.
So there was definitely an inflection point in your. Yes, no, okay. There was definitely an inflection point in your graph,
Yeah.
and I'm sure there were more than one thing there. Can you say what 3 things happened when that inflection point happened?
It was a combination of things. I think most of the inflection points in that graph are either about making things easier, right? I talked about increasing the conversion rates, making it easier and easier to sign up, or launching some new feature or source of value for the product that got more people excited.
I think we're starting to lose the audience, so rather than do that, why don't we give a rousing applause for
right.
Elliot?
Thank you.